Hi, I'm Patrick Cobb with AARP South Carolina. AARP South Carolina is pleased to sponsor the Post and Courier's Pints and Politics series. AARP is a nonpartisan organization. We don't endorse candidates nor parties. We work on issues important for families 50 plus in South Carolina. Follow us at aarp.org/SC.
Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Autumn Phillips, a managing editor of the Post and Courier, and this is our first real Pints and Politics in person since, last February. It feels, I know. I know, I thought I was being dramatic. It feels great to look out and see faces and see a lot of familiar faces, our regular Pints and Politics crowd, and then see a lot of new faces. So we started Pints and Politics, I think 2.5 years ago during the presidential election. We had this idea. People would want to drink beer and talk politics, have a casual conversation. And it's great. We've been continuing it virtually over this past year. At some points, we had 700 people online watching. Today, we have 75 people in the room, and we have 200 people online. Before we get started, I just want to thank Palmetto Brewing, who has hosted us all these years, been very generous. South Carolina AARP, that has sponsored this, made it possible for 2 years in a row. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to pass it over to, we're here to see our representative, Jim Clyburn. He's going to be interviewed today by Thomas Novelli, who covers politics out of Charleston, and Skylar Croft, who's been covering politics in South Carolina for the Post and Courier for more than 30 years. Thanks for being here.
Congressman, thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
We understand you're not much of a beer drinker, but
no, water will do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But if you had to pick a favorite cocktail, what would be your favorite cocktail?
Oh, it'd be Jack and Diet, Jack Daniels and Diet Coke. That's easy for me. Always Jack and Diet.
Too many calories in the whiskey? Is that what it is?
No, there's too many calories in the regular Coke. So whiskey is fine, but I need the Diet Coke.
And one more thing I'd like to point out is you started your career as a school teacher at C.A. Brown, which is not too far from here.
Just a few blocks from here. It's at C.A. Brown. Well, you know, that was my first full year. I came here in January 1962, and I was at Simonton School. Now, a lot of people don't remember Simonton School, but back when I came to Charleston, the entire peninsula, this was before they integrated schools, and so every black 8th grader on the peninsula went to one school, Simonton School. And I came here in January because a teacher left in December, and they needed somebody to teach grammar and social studies. For some strange reason, they thought I could do both. So I came in January and finished the year at Simonton. The following September is when C.A. Brown opened. Mm-hmm. And so I went to C.A. Brown to teach world history, and my late wife was my new wife at the time. She was a librarian at Burke High School. So we had both sides of the peninsula covered.
Is there a favorite memory from your time as a teacher or a favorite student that you know ended up going somewhere?
Oh, Lord, I have a lot of favorite students, one of whom I just talked with on yesterday. Some of you may know Ralph Dawson. Ralph was probably my favorite student of all. James Gadsden grew up right here on the Cummings Street, and I think that raised by his grandparents, he and Ralph were in the same. Charles Foster, the first African-American to attend and graduate from the Citadel. Charles Foster was my 10th grade student, and I helped to guide him through that experience. And there were about 8 of them in a little club that they call Corsairs. And they came to me and asked if I would be their advisor, because the school district would not let them have a club unless one of the teachers would be their advisor. And I agreed. And that started the relationship. And I stayed in touch with those 8. A lot of others as well. But those 8 I've stayed in touch with up to this day. Ralph is now retired as a corporate lawyer, handling the American Express account in New York. Ralph and I talk at least once a week. A lot of you remember Barbara Dillard. Well, Ralph Dawson was Barbara Dawson's brother. She is Barbara Dawson Dillard. So I have those kinds of memories. I like to tell a story a lot about Ralph. I detected when he was in 10th grade that he was a great student. But Ralph had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, which is why he became such a good lawyer. And he didn't want anybody to bother in that chip. So after I left the classroom, less than a year later, I got a call from one of his buddies who said to me, Clyde, they always called me Clyde. For some reason, they couldn't detect that Clyburn was one word. So it was Clyde and then Burns. So they all thought my first name was Clyde and my last name was Burns. And so he called me and he said, Clyde, Ralph got kicked out of school. I said, what do you mean Ralph got kicked out of school? So he's been kicked out of school, and you better check on it. So I jumped in my car, went to the school to find out what happened. And the teacher told me what he had done and why she had him expelled. And I said to her, I said, if I bring him back here and make him stand in front of this class and apologize to you, will you take him back in? And she said, yes. So I went to Ralph's house. He lived over here, what we call the Jackson Street Projects at the time. So I went to his house, and sure enough, he was there. But his parents didn't know he'd been kicked out. He left to go to school that morning, but as soon as his parents left to go to work, he went back home. So I said to him, I said, look, I just heard what happened. Get in my car. I'm going to take you back up to the school, and you're going to stand in front of this class, and you're going to apologize before the class. He says, I'm not going to apologize. But now, it was a little different back in 1962. And so I said to him, I said, now, Ralph, you're going to get in this car, and you're going to apologize, or you're going to have to kick my you-know-what. And I was very relieved when he decided to get in the car. So I took him back to school, and it took him about 10 minutes to do the apology, but he apologized, got back in school. He then got a scholarship to Yale for undergrad, a scholarship to Columbia Law, where he finished law school. And while he was at Yale, he was Howard Dean's roommate, Governor Howard Dean. And so I had this kind of experience with quite a few of those students. You can imagine what went on with Charles Foster, how tough it was for him to be the first black and the only black on Citadel's campus back in the 1960s. And I still have those. James Gasson, that I mentioned. James Gasson became the ambassador to Iceland. Can you imagine a little black guy from Cummins Street becoming the ambassador to Iceland? And when he was sworn in, he called me and asked me to come to his swearing in. And I went. And when I got there, they all came and got me, the people from the State Department, took me to a little spot that they had drawn on the floor. And they said to me that Ambassador Gaston wants you to stand in this spot. Now, I didn't know what that was about, but I stood in this spot. And when he took the oath and went to the mic he turned to where I was standing, and he said to everybody there, says, I want to thank my parents, my grandparents, and I want to thank that gentleman standing right there. Because of him, the world outside of the Charleston Peninsula was opened to me. And I would not be here today but for him. I almost keeled over. But that's the kind of relationship I had with a lot of those students. And when I...
Well, that feeds sort of into my next question. Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, and Lindsey Graham have all been quoted in recent times saying that America is not a racist country. And you have agreed with them, but your answer also expounds a little bit more on that. Could you give us more details on why you think America is not a racist country based on...
But America tolerates racism. And that's what I said. And that's what I believe. And I think everybody here who are right-thinking people, you will know that this country has tolerated racism time and time again. That's why they tolerated those same students I talked about and would not let them go to the schools and areas to their homes because they took advantage of the tolerance of racism that took place in this country. And one of the problems we have as a country is that we won't confront honestly what our history is. All of us know what the history is, and we are not going to overcome that history by avoiding the discussions of it. You're never going to understand each other if you don't talk to each other. One of the things I learned by staying married for 58 years, that you can't stop talking. If you ever stop talking, you will fail in whatever the endeavor is. And that's what's happened to the country. We'll get right up to that point, many of, well, all of you are too young to remember Rowena Tobias. Rowena Tobias's father was one of the founders of the Jewish temple down on, what's that street? Not Society. What is it? Yes. Rowena Tobias, for some strange reason, started following me when I was a young guy. And when I was named director of the Neighborhood Youth Corps, there was an article in the newspapers. I was only 25 years old at the time. So Rowena Tobias called me and asked would I come by her house down on South Battery. She wanted to talk to me. And I went. I never met her. I had heard of her. She invited me in for what she called high tea. Now, I grew up in Sumter. I never even heard of low tea. I didn't know anything about high tea. But we sat down at this big, it was a parlor in her, what we would call her living room. And over tea, and here's what she said to me that day. She said, I've been following you for a long time, and I think that you have a very bright future because you do not hesitate, I don't remember what word you used, to discuss the issues that need to be discussed. She said, I want to tell you something. She's in the history of Charleston. Charleston used to have the busiest port on the East Coast. And she talked about how the economy of Charleston was the top economy on the East Coast. She said, all of that came to a halt because of one thing. She said, we would always solve our problems in Charleston by sitting down and discussing them with one exception. Every time the subject of race came up, we would stop talking. And we have never been able to solve that problem because we refuse to talk about it. She said, I want you to make me a promise. Please promise me that you will never stop talking. I promised Rowena Tobias that day that under no circumstances will I ever refuse to talk about race. And I hold on to that promise today. She's been dead and gone for a long time, but I keep my promise to Rowena Tobias. So I don't care if it's Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, I don't care who it is. I'm going to be honest and open on the questions of race and take whatever the consequences might be.
Congressman, we want to talk about an issue that is dominating the news cycle at the moment, and that's Senator Scott's crime bill. Now, it's been very slow moving, and one of the biggest points of contention is over qualified immunity, the legal doctrine that shields individual officers from lawsuits. Republicans want to keep it in place. You've said that you'd be willing to support legislation if that wasn't in there. Will your party come to a compromise on that issue ultimately?
Well, I wish. Here we go again. Remember what I said. If you saw the whole statement, I opened up by saying this. I am a great believer. If you go back and look, get the tape from that program, here's what I said right at the beginning. I am a great believer and subscriber to Lyndon Johnson's philosophy that a half loaf is better than no loaf at all. That's the way I open. Now, when it comes to qualified immunity, for me, the whole loaf will be to get rid of it. No loaf will be to keep it the way it is. So somewhere between where it is and getting rid of it, can we find a half loaf? That is what I've said about that. And I stand by that. Think about what I don't know if any lawyers out here in the crowd, but look in Black's Law Dictionary as I have. Now, y'all don't like to use Webster and Standard. Y'all want to use Black's Law Dictionary. Well, look up qualified. The very first word you're going to find is limited. Limited. But the Supreme Court interpret qualified as being absolute. Qualified does not mean absolute. It means limited immunity. So yes, I would accept limited immunity for police officers, but absolute immunity, no.
And this issue also, it comes as Charleston is having a lot of discussions about criminal justice reform, specifically after Jamal Sutherland, who was a mentally ill man from your district. He died in the Charleston jail after being jolted by tasers and pepper spray. Do you believe this incident underscores the need for reform in terms of dealing with the mentally ill or defending the police? And do you think that the individual officers should be held liable?
Look, I spoke with Amy Sutherland, this young man's mother. I came here to Charleston, stopped at the airport, called her on the phone, and offered my condolences, and offered beyond that. This was before the settlement. Now, here's what I think. I think that we ought to be very careful about how we express what we really mean. When John Lewis and I met in October 1960, we were 19-year-old college students, and we were original organizers of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. I was one of the original members of SNCC. We believed and we adhered to the philosophy of Martin Luther King Jr. of nonviolence. However, we woke up one morning and a new slogan had taken over. Burn, baby, burn. Some of you remember that. and we lost the entire movement. They kicked John Lewis out of SNCC. Can you imagine? A lot of people don't know that. John Lewis was kicked out of SNCC less than a year after the Selma March. The Selma March was in March 8th, 1965. Before March of 66, John had been kicked out of SNCC. He had left Atlanta and went up to New York and stayed up there for a full year before he came back. Now, we lionized John today, but the folks who took over SNCC, burn, baby, burn, set cities and towns on fire, nobody remembers them. So we ought not say things. Nobody wants to defund the police. So if you don't want to defund the police, why say it? Why engender that opposition? A lot of people will argue with me on this, but I've been around politics a long time. Come July 21st, next month, I'm going to be 81 years old. I was elected president of my youth chapter of the NAACP when I was 12 years old. So now you do the math. That's how long I've been around this business. And Jamie Harrison took the whipping he took over defund the police. His campaign was ascending. I was watching the polling. I was talking to people. And all of a sudden, I saw the TV ads. Jamie in the middle, Schumer on one side, Nancy Pelosi on the other side, and the caption over their head, they want to defund the police. His campaign took a dive. I know that. So don't say things. When I talk to people, they say, well, that's not what we mean. We don't mean defund the police. Come on. Well, why say it? Why equip the opponent with all the ammunition they need to kill you in the next election? Now, everybody's saying that is the one thing, that's the reason Democrats lost so many seats over that slogan. And I'm old enough not to give a damn whether or not you agree with me or not.
This is the question from our sponsor, South Carolina AARP. And they've continually urged Congress to pass legislation to lower the high cost of prescription drugs. What do you think is the likelihood of significant reform to lower the price of drugs, especially allowing Medicare to negotiate the cost of drugs?
The chance is very good. It's not going to be easy. I get a lot of flack from a lot of people because I'm supported by a lot of pharmaceuticals. Well, a lot of you may know. My late wife fought a 30-year battle with diabetes. Her father was a double amputee when he died. Because of the research that I fund every chance I get, when she lost her battle, she still had all of her limbs because we knew from the research what to do. It's no accident that in front of the research center down at the Medical University of South Carolina is called the James E. Clyburn Research Center. Not because that I fund pharmaceuticals, but because I fund research. I have garnered millions of dollars for research. So I think that we can pass H.R. 3. H.R. 3 is the bill with that. But we've got to make the case on research. We got to get people to think beyond the headline. Your enemies will always put foolishness out there, and I see it once a week. Jim Clyburn is in the pocket of Big Pharma. I want somebody to show me one vote that I have ever cast that will denote that I'm in the pocket of Big Pharma. You can't find it. But if you go to the contributions list, you will see that they support me. They support me because I work hard every day trying to get as much money as I possibly can for research. My mother died at 55. She died because of multiple myeloma, which was a death sentence. From the diagnosis to her death was 2 days shy of 8 months. Today, because of research, I know people who have been living with multiple myeloma for 15 and 20 years because of research, not because of what pharma may be charging, but because of the research we give to drug companies. We are able to be here unmasked today because of research. That's why we're here. So let's not be so short-sighted about this. People love to just pick up what somebody will say, and I'm going to tell you, my first grandson came here with illness that everybody called, I don't know the proper name for it, but it's called short gut, where I grew up. He had 3 operations before he was 10 pounds. But because of research, we were able to find the kind of assistance he needed. He's now a 26-year-old college graduate. Now, sometimes I think he's not too grateful for that, because I was out here working for Joe Biden, and he was working for Buttigieg. And I told him, I said, now, boy, I've done a lot for you over the years, and I've never spanked you. But on election day, you're going to get a good spanking. One of the reasons I worked so hard for Joe Biden was because I wanted to give him a good spanking.
And we wanted to kind of go back in time for a minute, too, to talk about the riots that happened on Capitol Hill. Recently, the Republicans moved to prevent a bipartisan committee to look at what happened on January 6th. And it was clear was it clear to you that they were protecting Donald Trump and were his supporters on top of their minds?
Well, I'm not going to say what they were doing. I have no idea what was going on in their heads. But I believe deep down inside that the result of that vote is to protect Donald Trump. I don't know what they would think. I know what I think. And I think that Donald Trump incited that insurrection. It was not a riot. It was an insurrection. Tulsa, Oklahoma was not a riot. It was a massacre. That's the kind of stuff that goes on all the time. We mislabel things. We tell a big lie about things, and then everybody operate under the mislabel. Tulsa was not a riot, and that insurrection on January the 6th was not a riot. It was an insurrection precipitated, egged on by Donald Trump. Now, I may be dead and gone when it comes to light, but sooner or later, the country will come to grips with the fact that we elected a person to be our 45th president who did everything that he possibly could to undermine this democracy and to bring it down. And let me tell all of you, study your history. The Roman Empire was the greatest empire the world has ever known. But it fell. We got the greatest democracy that the world has ever known. But if we aren't careful, we're going to lose it. And it all started with the election of Donald Trump.
And the follow-up to that is just, we may never know what happened in the White House or what the communications were across, the government because of it. So where do Democrats go from here on that issue? And ultimately, is democracy in mild, medium, or serious jeopardy going forward?
Yeah, democracy. I said to someone the other day, all of us heard it. We were growing up. They said that Nero fiddled as Rome burned. Well, I said yesterday and the day before, our senators are fiddling and our democracy is on fire. That I believe very strongly. And here's what Democrats are doing. Chuck Schumer wants to bring the issue back to the floor again. For some reason, they think they got 7 votes. They might be able to pick up 3 more and get the issue there. So give them another chance to do it. So my advice to Nancy Pelosi, which I won't usually make my advice public, but I've already said to her, let them bring it back. But if it doesn't, we need to move. We need to move in the House. Now, I don't know what she's going to do. I prefer, and I'm saying it here today because I've already said it publicly, I prefer that give it to the Standing Homeland Security Committee. They did a good job of fashioning a bipartisan vote. 35 Republicans voted for that bill to leave the House. If you could only get 6, the 7 guys said if he was there, he would vote for it. I'll take him at his word. But only 6 Republicans voted for it in the Senate. So my idea is if you've got a committee, like the Homeland Security Committee, where the chairman, Benny Thompson, the ranking member, Katko, have demonstrated that they have developed a relationship of working together in the bipartisan way. They've done that. So give them the responsibility, give them more staff, give them the research, give them more resources, and let them conduct the investigation because they have demonstrated that they can do it in a bipartisan way. Now, I know that that's not the favorite position of a lot of people in my caucus, but I don't exist for their favor. I exist to do what I think is in the best interest of my constituents, and the best interest of my constituents will be served, in my opinion, if we let the Homeland Security conduct the investigation.
All right, just you and me talking and no other people here, just you and me. In your heart of hearts, what's Joe Biden going to do in 2024? Is he going to run again or stand down?
Oh, if all goes well, and he is healthy, by the time he gets to 24, he'll be my age. Okay. I'm all right.
Do you think what Donald Trump does is part of his calculations? Is that a big part, a little part? Is he riding out? Does he want to stand in Donald Trump coming back?
I don't think Donald Trump is in Joe Biden's thought process at all. Why would he spend time on Donald Trump? Look, we're thinking about the future. He is in the past.
We'll say if he were to step down, would that make Kamala Harris the chosen leader of the party? And should the party rally behind her or open up the primary process again?
Well, once again, I'm always informed by history. I'm always informed by history. Irrespective of what my emotions may be, I tend to study historical trends to help me form my opinions about what's going on around me and what I see down the road. And that is not a foregone conclusion. Getting the vice president, look at the history, getting the vice president, even people who have been vice president, unless it is a rare occasion when you move from the vice presidency to the presidency without some intervention. Nixon was out 8 years as vice president before he came back. Joe Biden was out 4 years and came back as vice president. It is very, very difficult historically to move from the vice presidency to the presidency, so that is not a foregone conclusion.
This seems like a lifetime ago, but let's go back to the 2020 Democratic presidential debate here in Charleston during the primary. As the story goes, you rushed backstage during a break in the action to tell Biden that he'd blown several opportunities to commit to appointing a black female to the Supreme Court, to say that publicly. How much did you stress that to him and say why was he missing that why was he missing that message, especially with the primary and your endorsement hanging in the balance there?
Well, I don't know why he missed it. I do know that he missed it. And the first half of the debate was over. I have 3 daughters, 3 grown daughters. I talk to them a lot, not just about politics, but about everything. On my way down here today, I was on the phone discussing some of my history with daughter number 2. Some of you know Jennifer Reed. She finally got proud enough of her dad to start calling herself Jennifer Clyburn Reed. But let me tell you something. In talking with them, in talking to my late wife, to whom I stayed married 58 years, she was very concerned that we had gotten to this point in our history and no black woman had ever been seriously discussed for the Supreme Court, and 4 women have served on the court, and nobody had ever discussed a black woman. And I knew what was going on among black people. You know, I'm a member of Morris Brown AME Church. AME stands for African Methodist Episcopal. So I know what was going on in the black community. So I was sharing with him what I knew was a problem, and what I knew black folks wanted to hear. Now, I was shocked to find out that after I told him what I did, even some of his staff told him not to go there. Maybe that's why he didn't go there in the first half. But I went back during the intermission, and I called them over. And I said, you've missed several opportunities. Please don't leave this stage without making that commitment. That's true.
And this is a submitted question from a Post and Courier subscriber in the audience. So first off, thank you to subscribing to the Post and Courier. We really appreciate it. It's the reason why we can throw great events like we have today. The question is, most pundits agree that you put Biden in the White House, and he knows it. This gives you at least 1 golden ticket. How will you spend your golden ticket with Biden?
Well, just before the debate, my wife used to tell me all the time, I don't care what you do when you're running for election. I want to see billboards. You can buy all the TV time you want, or the radio you want. I want to see billboards. So I always had to do billboards. So just before the debate in Charleston, I rented some billboards. And some of you may have seen it. It is what I want to see on my tombstone. I'm not going to be able to see it. I want to see it. And I want everybody else to see it. He did his damnness. And I want them to use the word. He did his damnness to make America's greatness accessible and affordable for all. That's all I want from Joe Biden. I don't need no appointment. I don't want to work no more. I don't need anything except for him to put in place policies and procedures that will make housing accessible and affordable, make health care accessible and affordable, make broadband accessible and affordable. That's my ticket.
How often do you talk with the president now that he's in the White House? I mean, is there a casual relationship? Can you pick up the phone, or his schedule is just so different now and so is yours that you just don't cross anymore?
Well, I don't talk to him all that often. But when I do, I put an exclamation point about everything I said to him. I can talk to him as often as I want, but there's one thing I've learned in business, in this business, is don't make yourself a nuisance. So I don't call him about everything. I know Susan Rice very well. She is in charge of domestic issues. Susan Rice, a lot of people don't know this, but her roots on her daddy's side are in Florence, South Carolina. And I knew her dad. Her uncle was the presiding elder in the AME church in Sumter, my birthplace. So I know that family, and I know her. I talk to her. If I want Biden to do something on the domestic front, I talk to her. I ain't gonna talk to Joe. Joe got so many other things on his mind. So I'm gonna talk to her. Cedric Richmond. When Cedric Richmond first ran for Congress, he ran against an incumbent. And I supported him against one of my fellow incumbents. He lost. I went down there, took him to a little speakeasy in New Orleans, and I said to him, I don't know when or where, but don't you drop out of this process. Don't you get disappointed. Your time will come, and I'm going to be here for you. His time came within 2 years, and he got elected. He is now on the president's staff, the highest ranking African American there. He knows who kept him in the game. He knows who helped raise the money for him when he ran the second time. He knows who got his choice to succeed him. I would say help get him elected. When I want something, I call Cedric. And I don't have to worry about Cedric calling me back. He called me back 2 times yesterday. And he's going to call me back later on tonight. So I don't bother Joe. You know, I tell people all the time, if you really want me to do something, find the person on my staff that you can talk to. Because they're going to end up getting the work to do anyway. So why talk to me? So I don't talk to Joe.
Here's another reader question we have. With little hope that the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, H.R. 1, will pass.
No, John Lewis is H.R. 4.
Okay. H.R. 1 going to pass.
Is H.R. 1 going to pass?
No, I'm asking with little hope that it's going to. What can Democrats do across the country to put up blocks to what the Republicans are trying to do in so many state houses as well?
I think that the best thing that we can do, and I've said this publicly, and I'm going to say it again here today, and I would hope that those of you who are so moved will really carry a proper discussion of what's going on with Joe Manchin. Look, everybody keeps talking about eliminating the filibuster. I have never asked Manchin to eliminate the filibuster. I've never asked him that. What I've said to Manchin, and what I think all of us need to say to Manchin, the filibuster was put in place by accident. It ain't in the Constitution. It's not in law. The filibuster is a practice, it's a tradition for extending debate on issues, because the good-thinking people in the government decided that we ought not allow the budget to be held up to the whims of any one person, so they put in place something called reconciliation. That if you put forth a budget matter and tie things, anything that can be tied to the budget can avoid the filibuster. So think about the word reconciliation. That is a word that is more apt to be used for the constitutional issues than for the budget. So I've said to Joe that I think that you ought to consider making reconciliation apply to constitutional issues just like it applies to the budget. Keep your filibuster for ideas and for issues like, should we build a wall? Where should the wall be? How high should the wall be? Those are not constitutional issues. So go ahead and filibuster that if you want to. Filibuster anything you want, but when it comes to my voting rights, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, those constitutional guarantees ought not be sacrificed on the altar of a filibuster. Keep the filibuster, just don't let it apply to constitutional issues. If we carry that argument, I think you'll be surprised at how much support you get for it. Every time I talk to people about it, they say, well, why don't you say that? Nobody is asking to eliminate the filibuster except people who are trying to subvert the argument.
Right now, the infrastructure bill is stalled, and both sides seem far apart on what should be included and what the cost should be. You recently said that time may be running out on a bipartisan deal, and you said, the other side is not cooperating. So what is going to happen now, and when is that drop-dead date for an agreement on an infrastructure package?
Well, I don't like to put drop-dead dates on stuff, and I'm not going to because I'm not in charge of that. My job is to count the votes when the thing comes to the floor, so I'm going to stay within my wheelhouse. But I will say this. I think we're going to do an infrastructure bill. It probably won't be as big as I want it to be, but I think we're going to do an infrastructure bill. If you heard the news coming out this afternoon, they announced, even Mitt Romney is now saying that they have agreed on numbers. I haven't seen the numbers, and I hope it's a number that I can agree to. But here's what I feel very strongly about. Roads and bridges are important. Water and sewage are important. Rail and bridges, rail and ports are important. But look, to me, the most important thing about an infrastructure bill today is broadband. That's the most important thing. Now, don't let anybody tell you differently. But broadband is as important to the 21st century as electricity was in the 20th century. Just think about it. A lot of children in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade are going to miss a second year of school. And they aren't going to be the children whose homes were connected to the internet. It's going to be those children who did not have the internet at home and could not stay engaged in education. And therefore, I'm not telling you what I think. My youngest daughter's on the school board up there in Richland School District 1. And we just had a discussion about this last night. We are both grieving over the fact that a lot of those children in her school district were not able to pass proficiency exams and are being held back for no fault of their own. Broadband, to me, has got to be a must in any infrastructure bill. And these people who are talking about they only want to vote for infrastructure stuff that's traditional, see, they use these words. Broadband is not traditional. So when they tell me that we won't be able to support traditional stuff, then I don't want to talk to you. Because the future, there was a time when rail was not infrastructure. Abraham Lincoln came with the Transcontinental Railroad. Before that, rail was not infrastructure. Dwight Eisenhower came with Interstate Highway. Before that, it was not infrastructure. Joe Biden, let's do broadband. so it'll be infrastructure from now on.
I want to ask 2 questions in one. You're up for re-election next year. Yeah. Are you running definitely?
I'm sorry?
Are you running definitely?
Not just yes, but hell yes.
Yeah, okay. And since we've also broached 2024, are you going to lobby to get South Carolina's primary moved up, possibly bumping an Iowa or New Hampshire out of the way, just based on the fact that this is more reflective of the Democratic Party than those states?
Look, this may sound strange to you, but I grew up believing strongly that one should live and let live. I want to see the Democratic Party made stronger. I want to see us get the best candidates that we possibly can get. I want to help Jimmy Harrison be a success at the DNC. I'm not getting out in front of Jamie on that. Jamie and I talk daily. I talked to him yesterday, got a text from him today. Whatever Jamie thinks is the best lineup based upon his vantage point is what I'm going to support. If he says to me, I think South Carolina is better off staying where it is, I'm going to support that. If he thinks we ought to move up, I'll support that. I'll just say this. If you think back over the last several cycles, South Carolina made the difference. Not just on our side, it made a difference on the Republican side as well. So being first in the South primary, has served us pretty well. So I don't know whether or not I'll be for moving up unless Jamie tells me he thinks that's the best thing for us to do.
So this is not a political question, but our sports department colleague, Gene Sabakoff, recently wrote about you, the PGA at Kiowa, and your love of golf. Yeah. Are there any good lessons about politics that apply to golf?
Oh Lord, yes. Absolutely. I tell everybody that if you play around a golf with a person, if you know anything about it, if you can play golf, you play around a golf with a person, you will learn how to relate to that person better than anything else that I know. And I really mean that sincerely. If you play around a golf with a person, you will know whether or not that person is overly cautious, whether he's a risk taker, whether he can keep his eyes on the ball. You will learn more about a person. Well, let me put it this way. I learn more about a person playing golf with him than anything else. Because I don't care what a person says to you. When he stands over the ball and addresses it, you will learn what kind of person that is. I often tell people that golf, for me, I'm going to be at the tournament tomorrow. I'm going to go down there to, that's in my district, by the way. I'm going down to talk to constituents, and I'll stop over at the golf course down there in Jasper County. But as I said to you earlier, I'll go down and interact with them tomorrow, but there are a couple of people that I'm trying to get something done with. So I'm going to be playing golf on Saturday myself. I'm not going to be at the golf tournament Saturday because there's a guy that I want to play around the golf with, so I'll know how to pick his pocket later.
Who would that be?
Ain't talking.
All right, we're bumping up against time now, but just to do some quick housekeeping, we want to thank Palmetto Brewery. We really enjoy coming here, and I hope everyone else enjoyed it as well. We want to thank South Carolina AARP that's continuing to be our sponsor for these, and we want to thank everyone for showing up and showing that we can do this in person again. So it was a real good turnout, and thank you very much. Right now we're going to go to our lightning round, which is quick answers to quick questions. So we're going to start and go from there, and then we're going to wrap it up. So let's go with the first one. What's the best book, fiction or nonfiction, that really portrays politics in Washington that you've ever read?
That I've ever read?
Yep.
Team of Rivals.
What was insightful about that to you?
Well, you know, Team of Rivals, as you know, is Abraham Lincoln's ability after winning the presidency. It was a tough thing for him to do. I mean, to succeed at. Lincoln was a very unlikely winner. Had served in the House of Representatives for one term. Was just not a likely winner. But he won. He won over some people. Was Chase and I'm blocking on that name. What was his secretary? Chase was the treasurer. Sam, yes. They were the ones. I think Chase was really the chosen one. But he had enough sense about himself to bring them into the cabinet. Bring them in. They knew stuff that he didn't know. And to me, that has served me as well. Now, my Bible, when it comes to politics, and I need to say this, is probably McCullough's book on Truman. A lot of you all know that I'm a Truman Democrat. And I don't mean any harm about this, but I've never been a Franklin Roosevelt Democrat. And if you study the history, then you'll know why. Franklin Roosevelt did do good work. He brought the country back from the brink, but Franklin Roosevelt he tolerated racism. Franklin Roosevelt allowed the South to do what it damned well pleased. And that's why we have these pockets of poverty today. The New Deal was a raw deal for many of the communities that I represent today. And so my Bible when it comes to politics is McCullough's book on Truman.
This might be the toughest question of the day. Who has, hands down, the best barbecue in the 6th Congressional District?
Oh. Well, since I'm just a few blocks from this place, I'm going to say Scott.
What's your go-to order?
I'm sorry?
What's your go-to order at Rodney Scott's?
When I don't go there often. Mignon, some of you know my daughter Mignon. Our house is right around the corner from there, so she goes there a lot. She's a ribs person. I'm still a hash and rice guy. Can't you tell?
Who is the easiest Republican to work with in Congress?
Well, you know, it all depends on what it is. I get along, believe it or not. I don't want to out them a lot, but you know, on the House side, Hal Rogers and I are pretty good buddies. I know the Republicans that I interact with, I get along well with most Republicans. There's some over there that I cannot abide. But I don't know if there's any one. I'm co-sponsoring legislation now with Harold Rogers on the 10, 20, 30 thing. Rob Portman is a real good buddy on the Senate side. I'll get along with those guys okay.
All right, one more thing I forgot to announce this too is please go to our Pints and Politics site on the Post and Courier website, sign up, register, and look for our next installment. We don't have anyone scheduled right away, but we can put these together really quickly. So just keep alert and keep coming back to the website. Be a last question. From your 8 decades on the planet, what would you tell someone looking to go into politics now in 4 words or less? What advice would you give them?
In 4 words or less?
In 4 words or less.
Learn what you can about the people you want to serve. I can't do it in 4 words,
All
but
right. I didn't think you could, but I'd
just
give it a shot. So this is your congressman. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.